Good day and welcome to Miss Valley Entertainment News. My name is Dread. Well, it's good to get back to recording videos. It's probably been over a week since I recorded a video. I'm going to try to toss a bunch of them out right now. Work has just been kind of kicking my ass for the last 2 to 3 weeks and been very busy. I've been enjoying finally having an actual weekend off, my proper weekend off. And enjoying it too much because now my weekend's almost done and I still got stuff to do. But such is life. So here we're going to be reacting to a video by Young Ye, and I apologize if I got Young Ye's name incorrectly pronounced. And this video is entitled Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of players since launch. Now, I haven't watched this video yet. We'll react to it together. I will say I was aware that Helldivers 2 numbers have gone down. It's obvious because there's a lot less people talking about it. I'm just guessing that I would just guess people have moved on to another game or something, but that's just kind of the obvious answer. I really don't know if there's more behind this or not. Let's find out.
Let's talk about Helldivers 2 and the current state of this live service. The game launched to huge success, definitely Sony's most successful live service that they themselves have kind of published. Obviously, Bungie is now part of PlayStation, but Bungie was not a PlayStation entity before its acquisition. So Helldivers 2 represented a big deal for Sony and PlayStation, and currently the game, it's lost a significant portion of the player base, and that's not to say that this game is like tanking and, that it's going to fail or anything. But looking at numbers, it has lost roughly 90% of its player base, and
So 90% is a significant amount. So from 458,000 down to less than 42,000. Or your 24-hour peak around 45,000. So yeah. That's around 90% loss. That's a lot. You can see down here at the bottom of the screen, we had February 274,000 average, March 217,000, April 142,000, May 65,000. That's a significant drop right there, and that tells me something happened between April and May or during May to chase people away or to lure people away. Interesting.
Questions as to whether this is a live service that can maintain itself for the long-term future. Now, looking at the numbers, like the fact that it's still getting, roughly 45,000 players every day, that's still like not bad at all.
Yeah.
Obviously a far cry from its initial all-time peak of 458,208 players. But this is by no means doom and gloom. But at the same time, a live service, the goal is usually to maintain a certain player base and see that kind of become a steady pace of players that eventually also kind of increases.
So you're trying to say maybe their steady dose of players for this game is going to be 40,000-ish. With a few spikes here and there. That could entirely be. And that's still not bad. I guess it depends what kind of numbers you were hoping for. I bet you if you told the developers before the game launched that you're going to get like 40 to 45,000 players every month playing this game, they would have been like, "Hey, that's pretty damn good, success." However, if you told them that was down from 458,000, interesting.
Over time, there should be like an ebb and flow. When a live service starts to see a consistent trend of kind of the player base diminishing, there are some potential concerns as to whether it can maintain itself for not just months on end, but years on end. And so questions are being raised about that. You look at something like, Destiny 2, which is one of the most successful live services out there, and in many cases sort of the blueprint of what a live service looter shooter should be. You can see right here that it started at a peak of 292,000 players, and you can see how that's fluctuated up and down, but aside from like some really major dips here and there, like this recent dip into the 30,000s, you can see there's this nice ebb and flow that highlights that people are still coming back to this game. And in the last 30 days with the launch of the final shape, I mean, that player base has utterly exploded. I believe we're seeing peak players almost peak again. The last time we saw it peak was all the way back in February of 2000 was it January? No, February of 2023 at over 316,000. We almost reached that number again with the launch of the latest expansion. So that highlights just this level of consistency.
So people come back when there's new content. Makes sense, right? They've invested their time in the game. Something new comes out for it, they're gonna hop back in and they're gonna check it out. And then they're gonna fade away again, and you're gonna be sitting around the 90,000 to 120,000 probably, or whatever. And the further away you get from that DLC or that new content, the more you're likely to decline until you put out more content again. This is the way things go. It's cyclical. It goes in a cycle, like a bicycle or a tricycle or a unicycle even. It goes in a circular motion. There you go. Learning words with Dread. You're welcome.
That showcases a live service that is alive and well and healthy, and that people will go back to if the content additions are substantial, and people have been really happy with how the final shape turned out. So I guess the question is, what does the future hold for Helldivers 2? Because this is a game that has released consistent updates, but it feels like those updates, in terms of bringing players back in a significant way, hasn't moved the needle by a whole lot. And news outlet Forbes highlights here this article from Paul Tassi, some statistics that are worth looking at about the game, like the fact that it is routinely outside the top 10 list and is number 58 in top sellers on the service, specifically referring to Steam, which is what we have a lot of data on. And then when it comes to the game being streamed, the most viewed Twitch stream of the game at this moment has 56 viewers. The kind of social media and content creation kind of data also matters too, because that highlights how much people are interacting with the game and how much it's drawing eyes to this day. And those numbers are diminishing as well. Not to mention that there are some complaints surrounding the current state of the game. Again, it's not like the game is an utter failure or anything.
Now, it seems to me, and again, I don't play Helldivers, so forgive me if my knowledge isn't perfect on this, but it seems to me there's been a lot of smaller things added to the game, and there's really just been a lot of fixing bugs, nerfing things, unnerfing things, looking at player feedback, trying to get, the right consistency to different systems in the game, that kind of thing. There has been some added content as well, I believe, but a lot of the focus has been on getting things stable, getting things working properly, dealing with any bugs the players have, that kind of thing. I would hope, if Helldivers 2 team wants to really keep this a success, they've got a large portion or a decent portion of their staff working on some major DLC or major expansion that they can begin to start to hype for people. Hey, this is coming and it is going to blow your socks off when it happens. Because that's the kind of thing they're going to need to do to start drawing those numbers back. Are they doing it? Will they do it? If you know more than I do, drop in the comments down below there and let me know.
Or crashing and burning, but people do wish for certain things to improve. Players most recently have been complaining that higher levels were too punishing to be fun, but after a large-scale buff patch, it barely moved a needle. Not to mention that, like I said, certain updates that feel pretty major have not caused a huge resurgence of players. There's been no significant surge other than a brief spike when a mass automaton invasion happened, but interest fell sharply after a week, and since then the game has continued to shed players quickly. And this is a live service. That's the main thing. If this were like a single player experience or even a multiplayer experience that has sort of a beginning, middle, and end and isn't meant to be played for years on end, then these statistics would be fairly normal. Yeah. But this is a game that is getting consistent updates, that a recurrent amount of money is being spent on by Sony and by Arrowhead. And so it requires a certain consistent amount of financial return every quarter and whatnot. And there's the question of, will this game have enough financial returns to justify its maintenance over the long term? As for why people are potentially dropping out of this game currently, well, Paul Tassi, again, he's the one who's been kind of covering this a lot. And looking at some of the comments, it's interesting to see what people are saying. Some people are theorizing that maybe Sony forcing the whole linking to a PlayStation account, that whole debacle that spread far and wide, that they eventually had to backpedal on, that might...
And it seems to me that a lot of people still got locked out of this game in various regions, did they not? So perhaps some of those regions that are now locked out, thanks to what Sony did, and I do believe some of those regions are permanently locked out because you can't. I believe that was a thing still. If I'm not right, then forgive me on that. I have not kept up on my Helldivers news lately. But if people are in some various regions are still locked out, it could be that there was a proportionate number of people from those regions who originally were playing the game and had to stop. That could have affected the numbers at least somewhat.
Might have contributed to a lot of players deciding to leave. Now, Paul Tassi, and looking at Steam charts, it is highlighted that when you look at the day in which this whole debacle happened back in May of 2024, looking at the Steam data there, you can see that it didn't really impact the game a whole lot. It wasn't like we saw a huge crash of players around that period. You can see that the decline has been steady all throughout this controversial time period for the game. It definitely damaged the optics surrounding the title, but they, I guess, backpedaled on it quickly enough, though there are still restrictions when it comes to which countries can access the game. But in terms of a pure PR perspective, they did do enough damage control where this didn't impact the game's numbers tremendously. Right. Others are saying that in terms of the kinds of activities and content you partake in with the game is starting to get a little stale after all these months. So somebody here said, I mean, I love the game, but it's still fighting bots and bugs on nearly the same planets with slightly different guns. I love the game, but for a live service, it's too shallow.
So people used to play a lot, hit the 50 cap before the update. My main reasons for moving on, says Matt. Enemy variability or lack of. Grinding challenges for the battle pass is boring. Can I just say I'm someone who hates seasons and battle passes with a passion. And if your challenge is to get your battle pass and get through it constantly is just feeling like a grind where you're doing the same crap over and over, you eventually stop caring. Most of the new weapons they put out were bad gimmicks. Ooh. Hopefully they learn from that really quickly. And collecting samples got to be really grindy. Interesting.
Once I maxed out every ship upgrade, I had nothing to work towards. And that's kind of the general feedback I'm seeing. It's like there's an incredible foundation here. It just, as a live service, it needs to be more developed. It just needs significant more content additions.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been getting some cool content here and there, but we're not talking about like expansion scale levels of content and campaign experiences and modes and stuff like that. And so
you need to have an expansion or a DLC, really an expansion, that opens up new ways, not necessarily new ways to play the game, but new ways to experience the game. If your missions end up being invariably the same, you go down to a planet, you take your weapons, you shoot a bunch of enemies, you blast back off. If that's all it is, then there needs to be something. There needs to be something you could do in the hub, some interactions, some more character customization, some more story lore that you're uncovering, and something that goes just beyond the parts that are too grindy and too the same. I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe the devs for this game don't know either. I don't know. Or maybe they just never thought the game was going to be this big and they just weren't prepared for any of this. That's kind of understandable too.
Curious as to what's being worked on behind the scenes for Helldivers 2 to maintain its live service. I really do think that Helldivers 2 does need like an expansion level of an update. It's why Warframe, for example, has continued to rise in its status and player base numbers. Every time they release a major content for Warframe, it feels like they basically add a whole new game mode. It's just the additions are so substantial that it feels like a completely fresh game all over again. It's like a fresh new addition on top of all of the good things that came before. And I think if Helldivers 2 can do that, I think there's still a chance for this game to come back, because, again, the foundations are solid enough that if you give players a reason to come back to this, they will. It's also worth noting that it takes a lot to make expansion levels of content additions, especially when you weren't expecting that your game would reach a level where it might require that, because the player base turned out to be significantly larger than you ever anticipated as a development studio. You know, we've seen...
So, unfortunately, this means it takes the team a while to figure out how to best do this. And as they're trying to figure it out, they're floundering. And again, you add on to that the bad PR and the bad press they got from being part of the, hey, you got to sign up for Sony. You know, you got to have a Sony account to play this, blah, blah, blah. And the way that blew up on the internet, people aren't really as willing to give them a chance. They jump in, they play the game for a while, they're like, this is really fun, yeah. And then your buddies now suggest, hey, let's go play this game. And you're like, okay, cool. Then you're off playing something else, and you're like, you guys want to go back to Helldivers? And like, has it got anything new? No? Then no, not really. And that's the state they seem to have the state of the game right now. They obviously do still have some loyal fans, but I would suspect you're going to continue to see that go down, hopefully a little more gradually now, until they can figure this out. And if they can't figure it out, or if they figure it out too late, and it may already be too late, that may be it for the game. Stay tuned for Helldivers 3, I guess. I don't know. We'll see.
Reports of Arrowhead saying that their plans have significantly shifted after seeing how successful this game became. And so the team is likely grown, and there's likely just a lot more. There are likely much bigger plans for this game than there were before. And hopefully, once they get into the rhythm of that, we'll see a consistent cadence of substantial content releases that makes the game consistently feel fresh over the...
Nice to see that I have not seen this video before, and I'm talking about various things and playing the video, and Yongay is kind of saying a lot of the exact same things. It's common sense, but you put your noggin to it.
Long term. And so, I don't know, I'm personally not too worried about the future of this game unless we start to see nothing come out for this game, or nothing refreshing enough for this game to be able to really recover from what is currently a pretty consistent dip in players and a pretty consistent decline. But this is far from hopeless when it comes to it making a comeback. I really want this game to continue its success, because I think its model, both in terms of its consumer friendliness, aside from the whole PlayStation Network linking situation, and just what a passion project this feels like, and just how deserved this game is in its success. I really don't want this to become an example of failure. I want this to become an example of like what can happen when you don't try to just copy others and kind of really have unique ideas and take a genre and kind of do your own thing with it instead of chasing trends. You kind of do have...
The problem, though, is if you didn't expect the success you have, your game may never have been built or the kind of expansions and DLCs you're now trying to think of to keep the player base there. And it may just be The base game will not allow you to do what actually needs to get done. That's a possibility as well. These are why games fail. I mean, and again, Helldivers 2 is not a failure. It was a good success story. But long term, and it, for a live service game, it is about long term. Long term success doesn't look good for them right now. They may still be able to pull it off, but it doesn't look good.
Have your own unique take on it. On top of the fact that you monetize it in a way that feels ethical, the cheaper price point for this game combined with monetization that doesn't feel too in your face and like you're getting too locked out of substantial, desirable content. There's a lot that this game gets right, and hopefully it's something that will be continued by developers in a way where it becomes an example of how to do a live service right.
All right, so the original video will be linked down below. Thank you to Yong Ye. This is my reaction to his video. Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of players since launch. If you're a Helldivers player, you got some comment to make, drop it down below. If you're not a Helldivers player and you still got a comment to make, drop it down below. If you have no comment to make, don't drop it below. Why would you drop nothing? I don't know. This is Mist Valley Entertainment News. My name is Dread. That's my opinion. That's my thoughts. We'll see you in the next video, everybody.